And so let's take a moment of silence, please, to remember Bill. And Bill served on a lot of civic things around town. He's been a great member of Pittsburgh for many years. So let's offer a moment of silence for Bill, please. Thank you. Okay, it looks like everybody's present, so we'll certify that the quorum is here tonight. And next on the agenda would be the adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have any amendments, changes, or additions to the agenda that you received from Janet in your packet? No. If none, then
motion that we approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Frida to approve the agenda as stated. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by, you're not Christina. Second by Charity. We got too many C's here. Second by Charity. Any further questions or discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion to approve the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Next will be the approval of minutes from the September meeting. Does anybody have any edits, corrections, or questions about those minutes?
No, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from last time.
Okay, we have a motion from Frida Alston to approve the minutes from September.
Second.
Second from Christina. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved from September meeting as written as in our packet. Is there anybody in the audience that's here that wishes to make a public comment directed to the board tonight or the staff that is not on the agenda? All right. Seeing none, we will move into old business. Do we have any old business, Mr. Director? None. Any old business from the board? Okay, let's move into item 7. 7-1, please. The Powell Place Amendment.
Good evening. In your packet tonight, there is an item here. It's PB 24466, which is the Powell Place MUPD map amendment. And Jody here is the petitioner. He has petitioned to transfer 150 of the unconstructed residential units from residential area over to the mixed use. He's got some aides here. I'm going to have him go over his project with you all. Did want to point out that this does match a goal in our strategic plan. The goal being livable community, implementing strategies to reduce residential housing cost burden. Staff is, of course, recommending approval. And at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jody, the petitioner.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jody Lightoff. I'm with Powell Place Development tonight. Live at 481 Bennett Mountain Trace in Chatham County. Simple request on the outset. There was in the residential portion of the MUPD, there were 910 approved lots. We only built 538. That leaves a substantial number of lots that weren't constructed in the residential portion. We'd like to move those to the mixed use portion. That's the clean, simple ask. That's the only change to Powell Place. So that's why we're here tonight. And the goal of this is really, again, we're going back to 2003, hence the old school presentation tonight, because this MUPD was approved 21 years ago, and it has gone through a life cycle of ownership. And we are fortunate that the Holmes family and Powell Place Development was, when East West Partners exited the community, they sold off several strategic parcels. The Holmes family and Powell Place Development were able to buy those back. So we can still execute this plan as a holistic vision and finish this community. The only outlier is that hydrotube site. It's a brownfield that's difficult to deal with. And it's an outlier that we can't get control of. So that gives you a little bit of history in the land ownership, the requests that we had, and our kind of basis and our theory of all this is the market changed in the 21 years. Prior to this, Mosaic, Chatham Park were not even envisioned. This was seen as that nucleus of what Mosaic is today. With Mosaic being constructed and Chatham Park heating up, we felt that in order to really complete this community in the same vision, fashion, urbanism that was constructed beginning 21 years ago, that a bit of more residential in the community felt better and more adjusted to what the market conditions are. And I've heard from various presentations that, the town would like to see a bit more of the density occur in existing MUPDs, PUDs, in the already approved plan. So this kind of felt like this fit within that mantra. And I can take you through a series of boards real quick, and then I'll answer other questions. And just so you have a little bit of grasp, you got the plan up on screen. It shows you the totality of Powell Place with, a line that runs through the middle of the community. It says all residential on one side, mixed use on the other. There was 100 lots allowed in the mixed use. 42 of those were constructed. That only left us 58 residences. And that's where that theory comes in, moving some lots over and adjusting. In this graphic, this is Mary Hayes Garden Park. The yellow represents the 28 acres that are undeveloped, and the green is the future hotel site. We already have a site plan into the town. That's been held up through sewer constraints within the town. But we do have a flag, and we do have site plans, and we would like to go ahead and build this. With the Hampton Inn coming on before us, we're waiting to see how their occupancy and all that works before we release this hotel vertical. So that's kind of the beginning of vertical construction. These real quick. With these application, you have to put in your existing conditions. We did a full survey, did the wetlands. And so the significant kind of environmental feature on the site is this stream bed. And I kind of use that as my demarcation of north and south on the 28 acres. So we had waters and wetlands, state environmental survey this, and then we've got existing pond here. So that's the environmental constraints. The next board is the one you have up, so that's good. When we asked what would we change in the PUD, it's really, this simple, strike out the 100 DU and add 150 to that, then minus 42. And out 208 residential units on the 28 acres. And then adjusting the 910 down to 760. Simple change in one page of the MUPD. And then there was a request to kind of see what that vision and how that could occur on the site. And so this is just a concept plan. You can see it sketch form. It's still in that kind of 2003 language, boards and old school and pencil and renderings and not computer aided. But the idea is to really create that Main Street village feel plausible, right? So still answering the original intent of the community, which can I walk to the bar, can I walk and get a beer, can I walk and get a cup of coffee, can I walk and do some shopping? And the goal would be, our dream would be to land an all-day arrival. It's hard. It's not Main on Main. They don't like to be a later back off 15501 with the visibility, the access from 64, and then just creating that place. We think we might be able to draw a user like that in. It's a long shot, but that would be our intent. And these can be live works. They could be, building H in Mosaic that has a condo on the third floor. Again, we could take some of the 208 units that were allowed and spread them within the actual building form and get that true mixed use village. The rest is residential. you'll see some townhomes, some little cottages, and then simple single-family detached lobby. What we did here in the community meeting is, these townhomes have lived with that open space for 12, 15, 18 years. And so that's how we treat this alley. To me, in a sustainable, let's not build additional infrastructure just to be building additional streets. I'd like to leverage that and back up houses, so it's actually a true alley and you have, service on both sides. So there's a lot of thought that needs to go into this alley and how we address the citizens' concerns and the existing residents' concerns. This was really what they focused on. The other thing is, great, more residential, but you're still not delivering this, and it is our intent to deliver this. And we're willing to talk about timing and how that occurs. This is a separate standalone lot that we could start. We've actually started drawing plans and hiring an architect for this building. And maybe because of the view shed as you come in, we feel that that's kind of the value equation. That kind of reopens Powell Place up and says we're open for business. We can get a unique piece of architecture there. So that's, in essence, the kind of concept as it plays out on this. And again, when this gets ready for site plan, it comes back to you, correct, Randy?
To us.
Yeah.
Not back to this one.
And then,
Excuse me, Jody, sorry to interrupt. Could you leave that one up there for,
my pleasure.
so there was some, reading the comments here from the people, there was a lot of references to an alley.
Yep.
The alley, that north-south, right there, okay.
It's that alley.
Okay, that's,
And it's interesting to me because I thought some of a lot of their concerns was safety and security, and they had some vandalism on that alley. And I would have thought the more eyes and the more privacy, and being able to access the alley would answer some of that than a dark one-sided forest. So it is really the concern of how we treat that alley.
will that be parallel to what I call all the other alleys further deeper in Powell Place?
Yes. So
Where they're like backdoor access?
yeah. So it would be no different than any of the other streets in Memphis that are served by alleys or townhomes. And to me, some of the concerns were the backing up distance and a lot of that was due to the grades behind that alley. It's a tricky grading and forests had grown up and, with extended driveways, there's more flexibility. But we need to work with the citizens here and try to find a solution. I'm not sure what that is yet, but that is, we heard it for an extended period of time.
Is it a possibility that you can move anything or you can or you can't? Like move back the,
Again, this is a concept, like the hand drawn, right? There's
Right.
nothing set in stone here.
Right.
This was kind of showing how to get that, if we were able to get extra density over into the mixed use, how that might play out. It is just a discussion about, again, I go back to the sustainability, how much infrastructure do we build? Do we do a double alley? Do we break it up? I don't know what the answer is yet. And I think that's part of that process that we do.
So on this schematic here, is all the single family residential south of that little creek?
Yeah,
No.
and these are live work, so, the classic, shop down below, two-story, townhome above, or one-story, or it could be flats, two stories of just one-story flats. This building could have condos on. They're difficult. Those buildings are always a little bit more difficult to finance and find the right partners. There's a vision there. How that gets executed, I'm not sure yet. Yes.
Do you have a rough idea what the split is of the 28 acres between commercial or residential?
I'd say it's, just doing a swing test, it's, how you draw the lines of the open space, right? So I would say it's 40-60, 60% residential and land area. And, there's potential for some amenity here. We've got amenity parks, we'd like to make sure that the residential has that connectivity. You've got this beautiful park setting here that opens into green space, carries you through. So I think, it's a beautiful community. Our goal is to only increase their value.
Can you move a little bit closer to the mic?
I'm sorry.
The audio is terrible.
I'm sorry.
Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
No, that was,
Right off.
and so we just did a couple of quick renderings of, This is looking from the community. This is the hotel, future hotel. This is Powell Place Lane. That's the existing refuel. That's the existing main building there. This is the existing pond. And then this would be kind of what the main street would look like, and then the house there. And just kind of character of the streetscape along Powell Place Lane. And all the streets were coded in the original 2003 MUPD. So head-in parking, parallel parking on the street, all that was coded and ratified in the existing MUPD.
So I just,
I'm sorry, we're going to take a little tiny bit of a break because we're going to try to increase the audio.
okay,
If y'all don't mind, do you mind about a 2-minute break?
Yeah.
I know that's a little disruptive,
sorry.
but we're just having a little sound issue. If we bring in an individual mic, the sound canceling piece would keep people from hearing. You can't hear both. Anyway, we're gonna see what we can do.
Or I could,
We're gonna take a very quick break.
could I move this closer? If I just stayed here, would this work?
Okay, break cancel.
Thanks.
2003 technology.
We're back in session.
We are.
Thank you.
So, this was, being fresh to this project, I was introduced and brought in 2 years ago and picked up the MUPD, looked at it, looked at the land, tried to kind of devise a plan that would finish this community for the residents of Powell Place. It's been too long.
so so just so I am really, really clear, the change that you're requesting is what to what?
So,
No, I know, but I just want to make sure I really understand.
what we are asking for is currently we would be allowed to build 58 more homes in the mixed use.
Uh-huh.
We'd like to build 208 new homes in the mixed use.
Right.
So we're taking 150 of the unused residential entitlements and crossing the magic line of Powell Place into the purple.
So from the yellow,
Uh-huh.
you're literally taking, I'm it's bad or worse than I was just complaining about. Okay, I hope everybody can hear me now. But basically from the yellow, you're taking the 150 and you're moving them down into the purple part to increase the amount of residential available down in the mixed use. So it would be a truer mix of uses.
The truer mix of uses in the purple part.
Yes, correct. Yes.
And you say moving it from the yellow to the purple.
The yellow currently had an allocation of, I can't. say-
910.
Yeah, 910 and they built 583. So essentially they have 400 unbuilt.
Huh?
So you would simply take those and scoot them down.
Them down.
And the yellow,
mixed use.
yes, and the yellow is completely built out. There's
Yes.
not a square inch in the yellow.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
We're not adding more houses to where you live. We're moving it down into the part that's not yet
Right,
developed.
right.
understood. So,
To follow up, because I have the same question, are we rezoning land here?
So you're amending an approved plan. If your plan changes after you get into one of these mixed use developments, the only way to make he's never had the ability to take what is there and just, move the pieces around on the playing field. Essentially, if you want to make a change where you're reducing this from 910 down to just capping it at 583 and saying the rest of them, or at least some of them, we're moving to another part, he would have to come here to amend the plan. It cannot be done administratively.
and
First here and then the Board of Commissioners. Yes, ma'am.
currently in the mixed use purple part,
Yes.
it's allocation for housing at the current time today is 58 homes.
Yes,
And so by moving it from the yellow to the purple, will increase the number of homes, single family or just mixed or
single family detached, condo.
all that
All of the above.
Yeah.
from 58 to
08.
208,
Yes.
right? And I guess, as someone who lives in the yellow part,
Mhm.
I appreciate this. It's wonderful. But I guess my question is, that's a lot of density to add to that small piece of land that's in between the gas station, the brown field you talked about, and then also where the O'Reilly, I think it's O'Reilly's
O'Reilly's
and
Autos,
Sherman Williams and
yeah,
all
all of
that sort of
them.
stuff. That's a lot of housing to put there. So uh-huh.
Part of what, I'm sorry, don't let me steal your story.
No.
But part of one of the ways you increase that
Mhm.
is that housing could potentially occur tall,
Tall,
not
yeah.
wide.
Correct.
So more up, not out.
Right.
And I'm sorry, this is the part where he's going to jump in.
I just want
We
to,
hope.
so it is, you're hitting on the crux of the discussion tonight, right? What is appropriate behind the existing townhomes and on this, what I would say, the south side of the creek, right? That is a very unique piece between the dialysis building, Sherwin-Williams, and the two auto parts stores, right?
Mhm.
So what, from the town's perspective, from the residents' perspective, and from the developer's perspective, is the appropriate land use? If you go to the original plan, and it's hard to see in this black and white, because it's a 2003 document. But this was the amount of parking in here and the building density. You're allowing essentially another hotel, 285,000 square feet of commercial, non-residential commercial, and then 100,000 square feet of office. So 350,000 square feet of stuff south of the creek could go in here,
Uh-huh.
or actually in the whole kind of purple part.
In the purple part. Uh-huh.
So the question is really, is it parking lots, parking lot lighting? Is it big buildings? Is it back of house, trash cans, or is it residential for the south side and keeping what this plan represents is about 90,000 square feet of non-residential uses, right? So this is surface parked at 90,000 square feet. So we could just take that and do two of those over there. We could build a parking deck in order to accommodate the building heights and the structures to meet that entitlement. So that is the question. It's really before you is kind of, what do we feel is appropriate here? And we've heard that density housing and the walkability, we think that more rooftops would support more commercial, make the commercial viable on Powell Place Lane. And we thought it was a lesser intensity. And if we could create the same streetscapes that you enjoy, all the better.
But the key is that with all the density that you're bringing with the single family homes, one of the things that I remember we struggled with when living in the neighborhood and the apartments were coming,
Right.
was going to be the increase in traffic and things like that because of all the new people that will be living in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so I guess I don't see any additional infrastructure changes, right? Like no additional roads, anything like that to help with any of the traffic or any of those pieces.
And we did the original TIA and incorporated, and thought of.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what TI.
Traffic and
Impact analysis.
yeah, and for the whole development, it was updated with the apartments when they came in. So the roads support the development. So it's for me, intensity, you're saying this increased density of homes, but is having nice tree-lined streets and residential fabric better than huge parking lots and any open space in this area and just pure commercial program?
You're asking me that question or
Theoretically, you're right. Yeah, I'm not trying to pin you down. I'm just trying to extend the conversation about.
Although,
I mean, I do know that it was quite a major concern with the increased traffic and the number of people who move into the neighborhood. And we have seen some effects of that in terms of, speeding people down the road.
No, we heard that in the community meeting. We actually spent almost 2.5 hours in the community meeting listening to all the concerns. So
Right.
we didn't cap it at an
it's
hour.
in your packet this month.
Right. Sorry, busy.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
But what I.
Yeah, so it's, okay, the residential versus, don't take this the wrong way, but there's nothing holding us back from putting a Costco here, right?
Love a Costco there. That would be great.
Traffic, traffic.
I'm just saying,
Traffic.
there's absolutely nothing keeping you from putting a Costco there. Absolutely. Is that what you're telling me?
Right, I mean, it just, and I want you to think about parking lots, building fabric, building the architecture and what makes comfortable, walkable, scalable,
Sure.
connected community that has good open space and ability to walk to retail.
Right.
So it's a theory that we generated.
What about the order? Some public comments were talking about, the desire to build a commercial first, or is any obligation to do that, like walk to
I
what?
think we're willing to put something on record when we get to the Board of Commissioners to deal with timing of commercial. I think that's very fair. I mean, again, 21-year-old MUPD. At some point, the vision you bought needs to be realized. And what scale is that? Is it 90,000 square feet of commercial? Is that enough? Or is it mosaic and 4-story buildings and all? So
I have a question. You said the yellow portion was completely built out already, sorry, on this map here.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you're unable to transfer the units, are the units just lost?
yes.
Which is why we're trying to give him the ability to reimagine the bottom half. There's a label over part of the land. If you sort of mentally remove that, it's a significant portion of land. It's not quite the same amount as the one up top, but let me just say the specific issue is the approved, okay, mixed use plan development, which is what this is. They were originally granted every single thing you see over here in this black box over here with the residential, the mixed use, how it works out. So every bit of that was something they were granted at the time this was approved 20 years ago.
It was, and we took a ride to see a place that was like, that they was trying to build it like, and you're right, all of it is not there.
Right.
So it's either gonna be there or it's just gonna be plain land, one or the other.
I will say in all of this, there's market forces out there that, you know, this is our best spot today. We could get a call tomorrow that says, I want to buy the whole thing. And we, you know, entertain a development offer from another developer from outside and say, okay, design guidelines, you got to do it this way. You know, so this is kind of our formula right now. And that's why we're asking for the residential to kind of see how we can integrate it.
In the original approval, there was a list of uses. So comment he was just making, and only paraphrasing a little bit, but essentially if something came in that was on that list, it would not be a trip back here. It would just be just kidding, I'm going to do this instead. So, and that is an option.
That area feels very residential to me. And I know we're trying to increase housing in town, so.
I mean, it's affording us a flexibility. There's a lot of ways we could I mean, do we put a layer of again, getting back to how do you integrate, you know, this plan assumes you're integrating on second, third floors. You know, is there a way to integrate a little bit more commercial down here? Is there, I don't know what the forces are. I know that Chatham Park's bringing a lot of people and all the name brands are now looking at where are the entitled pieces that we can build. And the market seems right for us, but somebody that we don't know could call us in a moment's notice.
And really, the only thing that we are giving any kind of advice on, though, is whether or not you can move the additional units of homes, right?
Yes.
Everything else stays the same.
Everything stays the same. Simple one sentence ask.
Unless he decides to change it again in a year.
Is the two businesses north of Rock Springs Road, they're in Powell Place proper, aren't they?
These were part of Powell Place Village. It's a complicated history of when East-West Partners sold off these parcels, right? And so the dialysis building and these all use the stormwater management, so there's cross easements there.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, and that gets into the whole sewer discussion. Because we were granted a certain amount of sewer when we repurchased from the remaining parcels from Powell Place Village in order to put this assemblage back together. And I think we've got like 3,423 gallons left over from that purchase. I don't know. I mean, there's numbers there. You know, Powell Place originally pre-purchased 200,000 gallons of sewer. that we were never granted. And so we, another reason why the hotel and things have lagged, and Chatham Park moved forward and Mosaic moved forward. So really, this is all about just backing up and calibrating to today's market and thinking about Powell Place as that walkable pedestrian scale and trying to answer that question.
But while we have him here, from staff, I do have one question. Old Rock Springs Church Cemetery, right? Is this the one that runs across the bottom of there?
Yes,
Does your project finish out that road?
yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was asked to ask that. Got it. Thank
We've got, the church is right here.
Yes.
And then the bar is here. And
What is shown clearly as a secondary access. So I want to make sure it's going to be a meaningful secondary access. Okay, please carry on.
And maybe this is a question for Randy, but what are the, like, how does sewer and water consumption compare between residential and commercial? Like, will it be more sewer, water consumption if it were to be residential?
I know, hey.
You-
The answer.
So,
Let me just say this. It depends on what your commercial business is.
Right.
If you think about the difference between a car lot, although we're not doing that here, but if you're thinking about the difference between a car lot and a laundromat or a restaurant or a place that does laundry, quite different. So I think the intensity is different. With residential, it's assumed at a fixed rate. It's 75 gallons per bedroom per day. So no matter how many units you have or how many people live there, if you're in a 3-bedroom unit, then you are 3 times 75 as your daily water sewer.
And we've had to adjust that a lot at Mosaic. Medical office, you go back to the building codes and that gets defined by the number of doctors. And so there's formulas for every use.
Yes, set up by
So
the
if you've
state.
got tenancy in the bottom of the building that changes, you've got to be able to allocate that sewage. I know you like simple yes or no, residential versus
Yeah,
commercial.
it's
but
complicated.
I think when the dust settles, it's, they kind of equal out a little bit. And, one of the things we did say in the community meeting is, 208, that sounds like you're going to build another multifamily style thing, and we're not doing that. We're not, multifamily in our parlance would be a 4-unit building, maybe,
But
we would not build another garden apartment.
But to go to what may be a piece of your question, or may not be, it may just be I like to hear myself talk. A hotel would use considerably more water than a Walmart.
Okay.
Bathrooms and the fixtures and the fact you're gonna have to have a kitchen. And I don't know about you, but when I go to a hotel, I fully intend to use as much water as I possibly can.
Because then, that was one where they came in with 1 bathroom, building code made them put 2, had to adjust the sewer flows and track those through. So.
And this might be more when the site plan comes through, but the creek, how long ago was that delineated?
A year and a half ago.
Okay, so it's been updated. Okay, and then
We actually have an application in with the Army Corps of Engineers for jurisdictional determination. They're not acting on it until you ask for an impact.
Right.
They're down staff. I mean, I've got 3 of them out there right now. They're not acting on it.
In the case of full disclosure here, we first started talking about this project close to a year ago.
Mhm.
It's been almost a year. So when something comes to you all, the thing to remember is we've been talking about it almost a year.
and then how does the impervious surface that you've already been allocated, how does that change doing the residential versus commercial?
I have not found anything in the documentation that set a constraint on impervious surface area
Okay.
because the project was so young.
Mhm.
Again, a long history, my professional career, but with Briar Chapel, we tracked every lot, every patio, every
Right.
driveway.
Yeah.
We've got, for all 26, 32 homes at Briar Chapel, there's a chart on impervious surface area and the commercial as well. That's why, again, I can put up plans and, you go back to this one and say, well, that's a lot of surface parking.
Right.
You're not seeing a lot of impervious
Mhm.
where you would have yards and front yards and street verges. street trees. So again, it, rezoning or amending this, it's just giving us a little bit more tools in the tool chest to handle this mixed use right, and work out a plan that makes sense and addresses residential concerns as well as what's good for Powell Place Village.
Yeah, I'm kind of recalling, was the stormwater north of Rock Springs Road for the dialysis center and that other business, were they routed south through some easement?
It's complicated because we have a sediment basin here as well. And so I'm having my engineers go, CE groups doing the civil engineering. We're trying to dig back through all the permits and bring all that back up and say, where is all the stormwater going? You can see that we've allocated 2 additional ponds here. Not sure where they're going to, you think about the low spot catching it. So the commercial can flow either north or south, and then we'll have a little bit more impervious and, really trying to extend this park across the street was a big vision there. That's why that line's just kind of straight. That we showed, community structure there and maybe some type of play field structure thing up in there.
So then would a new SIA be put together for this section? Okay, and then
We'd have to go through all the
and
calculations.
then your SEMs would all be based off of
And we'll
that, and then we'll have
hash out all the previous
Makes sense.
permitting.
Is all that flow from north of Rock Springs, basically Powell Place property, does all that flow north and that'll be contained?
I think there's an interesting stormwater system in front of the church, right? I think the church is piping over to this pond.
Okay, but y'all will contain the stormwater
Yes. Yeah.
to the north? Okay. So there was a list of comments from their, I guess it was a community meeting, not a public hearing.
Was.
Say.
Yeah.
Did y'all have any
Yeah, I didn't, and,
to that?
you go through there and there's that question on transit stops and, we built one at Mosaic and we built one at Northwood Landing, pre-planning for Chatham Transit, right? Like if somebody works at Lowe's Food, they could stop there and it's covered and it's got a bench. I'm not sure why the residents of Powell Place felt there didn't need to be a transit stop here, or I didn't know if it was like a transit hub or, where that was going to.
Thoughts?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
You live there, I'm asking.
yeah. I recognize the need for more housing in the area. And I think at this stage, knowing that this is sort of in pencil and things can be changed, it makes it a little difficult makes it a little difficult for me to envision what the plan will be sometime in the future. And I think what I'm afraid of personally is the amount of the additional folks, the many additional folks that will come with that and what that, sort of the spillover effects that in terms of,
Quality of life issue.
quality of life, not even quality of life, certainly, but also, I think about schools, I think about all the things, right? When you think about Pittsburgh Elementary School, kind of it's already run out of space, right? So you think about that many new places. But the question to me, which I always come back to, is what is the power that I have? If you can do this anyway, you just have less houses, right? Okay. So I think for me, it's just not really having a firm grasp of that residential piece, what that could look like. And I was going to ask the question of you, Randy, what would keep a developer, if you sold it to somebody else, let's say, from building garden style apartments? Is there anything to keep them from doing that?
Other than we hate them, not too much.
Not too much.
It's the number, and I typically on garden style apartments, you need 250 minimum. If you look at Medley, just built in Northwood Landing, that's 312, I think. Now you could say, well, Jody, what about the Guild? I think the Guild was a one-off at 165 units at Mosaic, and it's on a podium, and there's other factors and how that played out. I know Mosaic is talking about relooking at the remainder of that portion. But
Returning your attention though to this particular map, because the staff actually handles the meat and potatoes of this particular piece, the question is one here in my mind of, do they simply lose about a third or a half of what they could have built up top and can't relocate it somewhere else? Or can they get permission to try to do something denser down the bottom? Obviously, 20 years ago, there's an awful lot less emphasis on heightened density to keep affordability as part of the factor. So if the board were to recommend not to approve this as it's proposed, the only thing that actually happens is they simply don't move 150 units from here to here. They still build whatever basically they need to build. It may look different, but this is not a question of how dense do you want the bottom so much as it's just a question of, I built less up here, can I build more down here? That's literally the nuts and bolts of it. It gets down to actual site plans and street stuff. The board has decided that's a staff matter. So that's kind of how we treat that. And it's not a staff of one, it's a staff of many where I have the quietest voice.
That leads me, Randy, to this thought.
Would I like to go back to school and become an engineer? No, thank you.
Any conditions that we might feel appropriate here, will we see this again at a site plan? You will.
You will.
So all this issue about the width of the alley and the ability to turn around, et cetera.
Yeah, that, correct. So yeah, that piece would, yes.
But I didn't hear what Jenna said.
So if you're subdividing, would a subdivision with a preliminary plat come back? Yes, that would come back. But otherwise, the site plan itself, for the most part, not so much.
This is not a subdivision.
No,
Okay.
it's a plan development.
Finish up whatever they didn't finish, basically is what it is.
Yeah,
They didn't finish.
yes. Yeah, it's sort of like a lot of other things in the United States following the downturn, where you had neighborhoods that had to be sort of reimagined because they never got finished. In this case, I'm not sure that's the case, but different owner means different ideas.
Well, I don't know how best to word this thought, but I mean, you guys as developers and designers will, I think make a prudent judgment on what is applicable for the community. Some of those alleys, I got a friend that lives, I don't know, I forget the road name, but he's up in there and they got an alley and it's very snug. And I'm extremely cautious when I'm there because of kids jumping around and everything like that. So, I guess I'm just saying, be cautious with that. When Powell Place first got built and they were parking on both sides of the street, and I went in there one time, I thought, where's the fire truck going to go?
Yeah.
And when I talked to the chief, he said, if we get in there for a fire and there's a car in the way, we push it out of the way.
Exactly.
So,
And
so
I live on an alley as well.
Yeah.
Super in tune to alley living. So, and I think there's some tricks you have to play out. And, again, the simple request is, can we just have a few more tools and what will that final community forum be?
maybe I'm talking to staff more than I am you about road widths and all those things, but.
We would be following our standards. So one thing about narrow lanes is they're supposed to slow down traffic, but so I guess those children are a traffic calming device.
Hopefully not. Any other questions for either Jody or Randy or among ourselves?
Thank you. I mean, a great discussion. It all, I love community in the fabric and, what's appropriate. So
We have a recommendation from staff to approve this, but it is the pleasure of the board here.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval as as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve from Corey,
I'll second it.
second by Christina. Second by Charity. Is there any further discussion or question? Do we have to make a separate act? I saw in the thing on the motion.
The consistency statement.
Consistency.
Yeah, you can either do that as two separate, or you could just accept the statement as well.
Yeah, so I actually had a question. Is that even relevant since we're not changing the zoning?
We just threw it in for.
Okay,
I'm looking back at the attorney who's going, no,
okay, so
saying no, but definitely recommendation to approve is what we're looking for.
can this one motion stand for both?
That would be my belief.
Thank you, Jenna. Okay, so we have a motion on the table and a second to approve both the consistency statement and the approval of the transfer of the housing units. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so we have a vote of 4-1. I did not vote.
Voting is a yes, if you're the chair.
Okay, and the negative was from Christina. Okay, so the motion passes.
Did you want us to not vote, if it comes to yes?
I just didn't voice my opinion. You count me as positive. I'm okay. Yep. Keep me straight on these logistics here. Okay, thank you, Randy and Jody. While you're up there, Randy, I guess we are on to, affordable housing.
Well, I tell you, what I'm going to do is have about a 2-second discussion with you about the attachment this time out. Part of being on the planning board is that periodically I do like to share with you all some of the items that I read. I probably get about 300 to 600 emails a day, which is a sad state of affairs. But in this particular case, this magazine that is online, that's called Business Insider, actually posted an article that I thought was rather interesting. We keep talking about affordability, and I did want to point out to you all that, as the title here says, half the renters in the United States live somewhere that they can't afford. Over 30% of their housing, their money is supposed to be spent on housing. And of course, it's something more like 50% of households are cost burdened currently. I did want to point out to you that rent is soaring. What's really interesting is in some parts of the United States, it's actually going down as well, but it's more likely to be soaring. The thing that was probably the most important was probably the second paragraph from the end, which is the number of cost burdened homeowners, those who spend more than 30% of their income on housing and utilities, rose by 3 million people between 2019 and 2022 due to a recent report from the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies in the state of U.S. housing. Most of this increase was among people who make less than $30,000 a year. And that's for a whole household. So you have a household living on $30,000 a year, and they are spending roughly 50 to 65% of household income just on housing and utilities. It's a little concerning. The answer is, I don't know, but I'm certainly going to say that it's worth noting that the home ownership is an issue, and of course, renting is an additional issue. It says here that Hispanic renters are the second most impacted, with 53% cost burden, 56% among African Americans, and then 47% of white renters. So it's kind of an across the board issue, but it's certainly an area where combination of lack of available properties and just, I guess, greed. I give up, but anyway, it's all kind of in there. My staff, some of my staff, a significant portion of my staff, and I have just come back from the North Carolina American Planning Association conference in Greenville, North Carolina. It was interesting. There were about 500 people there who are in my profession. So it was an opportunity for people who needed to network or wanted to network to do that. It was very interesting to learn what is going on. Probably the most interesting presentation came from Orange County, North Carolina, and it had to do with farmland preservation. And the emphasis was on maintaining open farmland while allowing the amount of housing that's available to actually continue. Probably the most interesting statistic from the day, and it was a very long day and it's quite torturous to be there, but under housing underproduction, across the board, nearly every state in the union is having a problem with too few houses being built. And actually, I think if you don't really take this apart in your head and you're not really spending a lot of time thinking about it, you need to think about housing as being quite similar to Christmas trees. During the economic downturn from 2006 to, in some communities' case, including the one we just came from, Greenville, the downturn remained in place until 2013 or later. There are people who are still trying to recover from the collapse of the world economy in 2007. One of the things that was interesting was a couple of years ago, we went out trying to find a live tree for the first time in about 8 or 9 years. We've had an artificial just for convenience sake, if nothing else. I insist on saying that it's environmental, but the truth is I'm just too lazy to go out in the daytime and get a tree. So, and then put up with what you have to do to keep one. But what I began to notice is the price had tripled. And so I have a tree farmer friend who lives in the North Carolina mountains, and his family's been in the business for 3 generations. And he pointed out that from 2007 until 2013, they planted a third of the number of trees they should have planted. And so for a period that is exactly the same length of time, about 5 to 7 years, we're going to find astronomical prices on things like Christmas trees. The same went for housing. When the market tanked and when people were not able to get subprime mortgages anymore and the demand for housing collapsed along with the world economy, many states, North Carolina being one of them, stopped building. Many builders stopped building on speculation. And there have been some efforts put in place in recent years to try to turn around some situations. At least one situation that comes to mind right off the top of my head is that when I first entered planning, if you built a house on speculation, you began paying property tax the second the house was approved for CO. The property tax now starts when the house is occupied. So you can be a builder or a developer, have a very large portfolio of vacant houses, and you are not paying the property taxes that you used to have to pay. So it isn't that local governments aren't trying to do anything to correct the problem, but in terms of a lack of housing, North Carolina is 60,000 units underproduced, and that's statewide at all price points. The probably most extreme example would be the states of Texas, California, Florida, and Virginia, believe it or not, is down by 2/3 more than we have. As far as missing number of houses. There are some states like Alaska, South Carolina, and Louisiana that have plenty of housing and are not having our problem. But this particular speaker on what I believe was our last day there, they all kind of go together and run together, was pointing out that more important than zoning reform or any of the other things that keep being thrown into our faces as professionals in terms of trying to increase the housing supply, it is just simply a matter of catching back up. There was that little period during the pandemic shutdown where people were buying on speculation and the interest rates were through the floor. And there were quite a few people who were buying second and third and fourth and fifth houses or rental property and acquired a very large portfolio. But each of those people who bought a second and third and fourth and fifth house were also putting working families out of a house. I'm not running for office. I did want to point that out, but it sounds like the beginning of a stump speech. I did want to point out that there were other items that we discussed in the same conversation, but probably the take-home point for me, the two things that sort of got my attention during this guy's presentation, which I thought was just off the chain, was it's probably the first time I've heard an adult say out loud that the shortage of houses really relates directly to the way in which even affluent communities are still being impacted by the economic decline. Back pre-collapse, there were a great number of subprime mortgages where people who were they themselves astonished to become homeowners suddenly had a house with a balloon mortgage and no idea how you were going to cross that bridge in 5 years. And so as banking practices have become more reasonable and as the interest rates have climbed, we have new challenges today, but I still think in many ways, kind of like those Christmas trees, we're still catching up for those years there was no planting going on. I will tell you that I was somewhat horrified, although I guess I should have been elated. I give up, but I was expecting to go back to my alma mater and see a town that was just busting at the seams and was really just hugely developed. And as I drove through Greenville, what I began to discover as I was turning off Waze was that it hadn't changed a bit in 18 years, which was kind of either depressing and frustrating or comforting, depending on whether you're trying to find your way back to your hotel or whether you were looking around thinking about the absence of houses and housing for people in need. We spend, I would say it's a substantial amount of money and a substantial amount of time within the calendar year on continuing education. But this particular event is probably the zenith of the year as far as training opportunities, because the American Planning Association, our local chapter in the state, makes available to us a great number of things. There were many, many conversations about sustainability, which were mind-numbing, to say the least. And then there were quite a number of things about just general zoning, but the farmland thing was quite good. Up here in front of you is next year's schedule for planning board. We will not be meeting every single month in this venue, but we will be meeting here until we tell you where we're going. We're going to be moving back to the community house once it's up, running, and available to us, but these dates are here. I did want to draw your attention to the fact that January is the only month on that schedule where the planning board meeting is on a Tuesday, the third Tuesday, not the third Monday, and that's because King holiday is on that day. But this is going in front of the Board of Commissioners for approval at their next meeting. We also have a bumper crop of potential planning board members. We've put out application notices and we have had a bumper crop of folks. And so I'm preparing a presentation for the board, and it's my belief that at next month's Board of Commissioners meeting or at the December, they'll be appointing some members to take the places of a couple of folks who are no longer on this board.
And for y'all's information, Ray Carney resigned in the last month too. We are down one. Well, no, we're down two and we're down one alternate.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
So it's evolving, but I do appreciate everybody being here this evening, and I do appreciate your time and your interest in serving.
Any questions for Randy? Thank you. All right,
Appreciate it.
move into board member comment period. This is when you all can say whatever you want. Anyone have anything to bring up? Looks like they're going to be silent. Right. Hearing none, motion for adjournment is in order.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Moved by Frida.
Second.
Second by Corey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank